Ladies and gentlemen, Proposition's case seemed to mostly revolve around the idea of happiness and contentment, but living in a world full of uncertainties, especially the one that is very prevalent in the current creative industry because it is still very volatile, we must be careful about the career choices that we make. What are our 2 points of mechanism? First, as parents, we will push the narrative that formal education, such as schools and universities, are extremely important for our future success. Secondly, we would highly promote traditional careers such as doctors, lawyers, investment banker, or management consultant over new creative careers such as content creator and TikToker. There are two important things that are important to note in this debate. The first one is that it does not mean our side of the house will abolish the creative industry. We will just limit it and favor traditional careers such as economics, engineering, and formal education as well more than that. Secondly, is that we think that middle class actually consists of 3 parts: the upper middle class, and lower middle class. So we think that it's not fair for Proposition to say that all middle class people have the sufficient amount of money to actually finance themselves. With that said, we are bringing you 3 rebuttals for the Prime Minister's point. First argument coming from the Prime Minister. He said that opportunities for work are continuing to evolve, and where the value of it comes from creativity. We say that this is not true. Jobs that require a college degree tend to be more high paying and have a better prospect in the future. We can actually see this from actual data. If you Google the top 10 degrees of 2020 or the top 10 degrees in the next 5 to 10 years, it would come up with degrees such as engineering or medicine. But even if those creative industries are growing at an immense and exponential growth right now, we still think that growth is not very certain because this industry is relatively new and is still very volatile, which I will elaborate on more in my coming arguments. Second thing coming from Proposition. He said that formal education is monotonous and that some people don't like to be filtered or forced what to think. We say that pursuing a formal education does not mean it's going to be monotonous and boring. And it does not mean you will get a job that requires you to sit on a desk for the rest of your life and stare at a computer screen like Proposition said. In fact, we think that this argument is highly unexclusive because it can happen in their world too. Whereas in our world, for example, if we get a job such as a consultant in McKinsey, you will get to travel with business class and stay at a 5-star hotel. And this job actually needs a bachelor degree in areas such as business and finance, right? So we say that this argument is not exclusive. Third thing coming from Proposition, he said that we should actually take risk and break norms sometimes in order to be able to learn again if we fail. But we think that is easy to say when you're an upper middle class living in a nice home with the back of your parents. However, this reality is not true for most people that are living in lower middle class who actually need a job, a stable job, to actually finance themselves in order to put food on their table, in order to get sufficient heating for their family. With that said, we are bringing our first layer of principal argument on why having a formal education is highly important. First reason is that most jobs actually need a degree. Even if you want to work in the creative sector, you would still need a bachelor's degree. Now, this may not be true for more developed countries such as Australia, because maybe they have things such as TAFE courses where you can gain a diploma, not necessarily a bachelor's degree. But in countries such as Indonesia, most jobs would actually require you to have a bachelor's in something. Even working in Starbucks in Indonesia requires you to be a college student, unlike in other countries such as the US, where you can technically work in McDonald's for as young as 15 years old. And it is very much like this in other countries, not only in the US, not only in Indonesia, and not only in Indonesia. But by pushing this narrative, actually Proposition is actually putting individuals in dangers by giving them the false hope that they can succeed without a degree to fall back on, a degree as a backup. Now, it may be true, just like Proposition said, that there are a lot of people in developing countries that become video editors and TikTokers, but note that those are just the few lucky ones. We are overlooking the hundreds of thousands of people that actually failed in hopes of pursuing the same dream. From the 10% that actually succeed, we are overlooking the 90% that failed. Second reason is that you will be left with no backup or plan B if your plan in the creative industry fails. As we said, this industry is highly volatile. It doesn't actually guarantee you with a stable job in the long run. So if your plan in the creative industry fails and you have no formal education to actually fall back on, then it's going to be very detrimental for your future because you're not going to know what to do. Second layer of argument on why it's better to stick to traditional career. First reason is that they have the burden of having to create something new every single day. And it's going to be very draining. Because when we're talking about the creative sector, it means that we actually have to be creative in order to survive. We need to be able to have the mind to create new content every day so that people will come back to our TikTok account, to our channel. So even if in our world, work is going to be slightly more repetitive or boring, which again is not exclusive, in Proposition's world, work is going to be extremely draining, where work is not guaranteed to be at the very worst 9 to 5, but instead 6 to 6, where the lack of viewers on your TikTok or your YouTube will dictate whether you will eat or not not the next day, because even if you are middle class, your parents will not support you forever. It doesn't mean you are upper middle class. It can also mean that you are lower middle class. Second reason is that not every parent can finance their kids. Again, because in middle class, we have different sectors, and because things that we need for the creative industry, such as computers and expensive editing software such as Premiere Pro, is actually needed in these sectors, right? My third and final argument is going to be why it's going to be within people's interest to pursue formal education for their career in the future. We have 3 points of urgency. The first one is that the demand in the creative sector is very much new to the industry, and it's still very volatile and unstable. Because when we're talking about the creative industry, it only showed up in the market 5 to 15 years ago. There is no guarantee that this area or this sector will hold up for the upcoming years because of how volatile it is. But even if it's showing a good sign that it will grow, then it's not going to be true for all players of the game. Because the thing that gives us so much hope in the creative sector is actually people's success. What we don't see is the failure. Because as I said before, out of the 10 that succeeded at becoming a successful YouTuber, for example, we don't see the 90% who failed because they don't show up. At least under our side of the house, there's an exclusive benefit of reassurance and assurance that you will get a stable job. Second urgency is that you will start off with no income, because when we're talking about the creative industry, then it's very likely for you to go into this job and not having any stable income to start off with. Your flow of income won't come straight away. Third urgency is that not everyone knows where to start. Comparatively with formal education, people are actually guided by teachers or professor with little steps. Even if proposition says that there are lots of free resources in the internet, those are only the basic resources. For example, you may see some free courses on how to trade crypto or invest in stocks, but what they're going to tell you is what a broker account is and how to buy low, sell high. They won't actually tell you how to maintain the profit and always beat the market, unlike in finance classes. There are 2 points of promises then. First, under our side of the house, you will have a more stable work-life balance and career, and that can actually finance you in the moment you start working. Comparatively, if you were to become a self-made Instagram star, for example, it's not going to be the same. Second promise is that you will be able to use the money you earn from your stable job to actually finance your hobby in the creative industry. So even if you still want to become an artist, you want to still become a musician, but you were to have a formal degree and actually work in sectors that are stable, such as economics or engineering, then you can actually use that stable income, your salary, to actually finance your hobbies in the creative sector afterwards. So you can still do both in our world. What are the likelihood of this? There are 2. The first one is that under our side of the house, we will have a better outcome, so people will naturally be more likely to choose this over Proposition's world. And second is that under our side of the house, we will have more chance to succeed in the real life. What Proposition's world would look like, however, is that many people are going to be confused because they will not be given the steps needed. Unlike with formal educations, they are going to give the steps needed to actually succeed. They will be 100% be on their own, and their futures will not be guaranteed. This is something that will not happen under opposition side, or at the very worst, this is going to be least likely to happen under opposition side because of the mechanism and the reasons that we have provided. We are very proud to oppose. Thank you.